Extra interview with Mary Nell Santacroce, conducted by Marilyn Summers on April the 9th, 1996, at her home in Atlanta, Georgia. The subject of the interview is Mrs. Croce's life and her experiences with Georgia Tech's DramaTech. Mary Nell, if I may, thank you so much for having us here today. We're delighted to be here with you, and we're anxious to hear your story. Begin at the beginning.
That's very flattering.
Well, we are. Tell us the story from the beginning. Where did you begin?
Well, I was born here in Atlanta, which has become an oddity. In fact, I came home from the hospital just a few blocks from where I'm living now, in an apartment building on Peachtree. I went to schools in this area. I went to 10th Street School, which no longer exists. And then I went to O'Keefe Junior High, and I went to Atlanta Girls High.
O'Keefe.
Then I went to the University of Georgia.
So you really are local.
And then I went to Emory, yes.
O'Keefe is on Georgia Tech's campus now. So that's where you went to high school, was O'Keefe?
That's right.
Wonderful. And then what happened?
Well, I suppose that my interest in the theater and dramatics started in grammar school. I remember being in skits and being elected. What was I elected? The funniest or something. Then junior high, I was elected the wittiest, and in senior high, the most original, I think. So I got a title each time. As I say, I've been making a fool of myself all my life.
Were you encouraged to do that?
Well, yes, I was asked to do it even, it seems. And then, of course, I went to the University of Georgia, and freshman women at that time could not participate in the first 2 quarters of the freshman year because you're supposed to spend all of that time studying. But the spring quarter, you're eligible, and I was cast in the spring play of my first year at Georgia. And from then on, every quarter I was in college. I was in the whatever the show was that time. And then when I went to Emory for my master's in speech and hearing, I became clinically certified to teach speech. So I have had in my life, at the conventions in town, they'd have the clinical speech people and the speech arts people, and I could go in both rooms if I wanted to.
You were ready for both sides.
Which has been a great help because the opposite discipline has been a...
Helps you understand both sides of things.
And I suppose I've always loved speech, and my earliest memory is my mother reading to me and reading Longfellow, and I can remember the bars of a crib-like bed. Just very vague. But
then you had to be very, very young.
Very, very young, although I think you stayed in cribs longer then than you do now.
And your mother was reading Longfellow?
Was what?
She was reading Longfellow?
I remember she liked the cadence, you know, right out of the hills of Habersham, down the valleys of Hall, rode the 600, you know, all of that sort of thing. And I don't know. I just happen to remember that. I'm sure she read some other things, but she gave me a great respect for the language and a great interest in it, which has been with me always.
All your life. Did she approve of you going into drama?
Oh yes, she was quite. She backed me up on anything I wanted to do.
That's great.
So my connection, actually, with Tech, I had married a Tech fellow, Hugh Ivey, who continued to teach at Tech after he graduated. He was a physicist, and he taught in the research center. What do you call it?
The experimental station, or Georgia Tech Research.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a friend who was in the radio business, and somebody had gotten hold of him to ask him. They needed a director for the play over at DramaTech. Mrs. There was a lady. Let me see if I got it written down here. Mrs. Frances Bragg. Mrs. Bragg had helped him out and directed a couple of things. So our friend Zena Sears took it on and directed Petrified Forest, was it? Heaven Can Wait, I remember he did. And I went over and helped put on makeup before the shows.
Now, had you ever done any drama at all by that time, other than what you did in high school?
Oh yes, well, in my college years, as I say, were quite full of drama. And when I got through with that, I did some things with the Atlanta Civic Theater.
So you were starting to be professional then, with the Civic. Would you consider that professional?
Back then, the idea of being a professional actress was so far out. I mean, there was no place to work except New York. And possibly things were coming up in L.A. On the stage, and of course the movies were beginning to develop. So I just, my University of Georgia degree was supposed to be in speech. They did not yet have such a degree, but I would have had it had they have had it.
Yeah. So you really, after you married and settled in, you really weren't thinking about going on Broadway or performing?
No, but I still was a member of the avocational theaters and very active, yes. I was very active in anything that was available here. Community-wise. Which, incidentally, has been that pretty much all my life. Everything that I've done, nearly everything, is here at home. And I've been very, very fortunate because more people than not have to go away somewhere
and look.
Yes. So things, you might say, have come to me a great deal. I've done some work, of course, out of town, but not a great deal.
It comes looking for you. So here you were in the Georgia Tech vicinity, and you knew someone who was actively working in DramaTech?
No, he was not a Tech member. He was a radio announcer. He was called Daddy Sears on the radio. His name is Zenas Sears. And he had some drama in his background, and things were pretty loose back then. You didn't get people's credentials too careful. But as I say, I'd go down to help with... He'd say, why don't you come tell me what's wrong with this scene here, what you think is wrong, and we'd talk about it, and I'd put makeup on the boys and encourage them. So then Zenas got put on the night shift, and that meant he couldn't do DramaTech anymore. So they knew me, and because I'd been around, and they asked me if I could do the next play, and I said, okay, I'll help you out until you can find somebody, you know, else. When they didn't find anybody for 17 years.
The beginning of a long relationship.
And
what year was that? Do you remember what year it was?
1948, I think it was.
Ah. And to the best of your knowledge, how long had the DramaTech been going on?
I don't know. Everything was sort of vague. I heard that Jack Pompan, the student, had named the club DramaTech, and that unique thing with no space between the end of drama and the beginning of tech. And that Mrs. Bragg had helped them out, and I don't know. I do have a now deceased wonderful actor friend who was at Tech when it was the Marionettes. And so I knew that...
You knew we had gone back a long way then. So where were we performing at that time? Where was DramaTech in 1948?
In the, not the ad building. The ad building is the big one in the center of the campus, isn't it, with a turret? Across the YMCA building.
Oh, yes, okay.
Across North Avenue.
Right. So there were performances?
Was where we started. And had rehearsals. And then we had some in the ad building, too. We had some rehearsals. The performances, there were some in the, what did I just call that building?
The Fieldhouse?
The one across the street.
Oh, well, today it's called it's the AF House today, but in those days it was the YMCA.
Yeah, okay. So we had some performances there. And then we had some performances I did in the Atlanta Women's Club Theater. It so happens, when there was nothing available.
Was that the one on Peachtree near 14th?
The one that they put the Gold Club in the back of. But, But the other professional groups were using it, and we were sort of uptown when we played there. We got...
How often did they put on a play? Was there a regular schedule? One a quarter.
Yeah. So it had to be over with before final exams. And just the right amount of time to mount a play, and if you started at the very beginning of the quarter. And of course we couldn't rehearse every night the way you do in professional theater. And I think it must have been just 3 nights a week until the very end, and then I started the system of having what I call Big Sunday. The Sunday before it opened, we'd go through having a complete run-through in the afternoon and then another complete one at night. And, because that's real hard on students, but oddly enough, we have had testimony from several people, my present husband is one, at these quarters that he did not involve himself in DramaTech. He made the lowest grades he made in school. Because if you were involved in DramaTech, you had to watch your time priorities and get your schoolwork done. And it worked out not to be a detriment to the scholastic record of the students, which made me feel very good.
Some people work better under pressure, and they have to take care of their time. Sure.
So, and ask a busy man if you want to get something done.
So they were busy men, those tech students.
We wanted a place to perform, and behind the varsity, there was some space and an old couple of rundown buildings, as I recall, which were raised, and they were building a new building there, and it was called the Fieldhouse. It was just a great big square building, and we were going to be allowed to have our performances in there. Theater in the Round was just catching on, and it was interesting, and this would be an ideal place to do it. Well, what we're going to do is about seating the people. We needed some risers, and so I was put in contact with one of the architectural profs, Edwards. I can't remember his first name.
We'll call him Professor Edwards.
Professor Edwards. And I pointed out that we did not want windows in this building because we just have to cover them up and black them out. So they ended up making some little slit windows that were easier to cover up, and was sort of a compromise. And he gave to his students the problem of creating a theater inside this building, the risers and how this was to be done and arranged. And so we got the risers and some backing posts behind the top level that you could hang fabric from, and to enclose the theater. And we had it was sort of, well, it was the shape that I had dictated we would like, having read, and that you don't want a complete circle. That's not interesting. And so it was, an oval is better, and ours was sort of a octagonal shape. The long sides had a bend. It wasn't that big, really. And the short sides did, too. And that gives you 4 aisles at the corners to make entrances and exits from. And of course, there are a lot of techniques and that you learn about working in an arena. Because how to claim stage, people say. Well, the strongest point in an arena is in an aisle. Because if you're standing in the aisle, the people on either side of you are very, very close. And they can see at least your profile, and if you move, they'll get 3/4 of your face. And of course, everybody else pretty much gets a good view. So you have to learn things like that. You have to learn that the furniture must always be very low. You have to learn that you try to move anytime you're on your feet and you're walking, because you want to move so that when you stop, your axis will have turned to favor a different part of the house. Well, we worked on all of those things, and some of the people got very sharp at maintaining those little rules.
And you were performing in the round.
In that Fieldhouse,
The stage was in the center.
Yeah. And The only problem was it had a tin roof. And if it was a bad rain, sometimes I'd have to call off the show for a minute. I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, please, we'll have some refreshments. We'll hold for a few minutes. And for technical things, for a place like the Georgia Institute of Technology, it was pretty grim. We had a reel-to-reel tape player and a little tiny booth they built for the sound man to be in, which was about 3.5 by 3.5. And one night, I remember he was trying so hard to get things right, and I went around to the door. I was furious because he hadn't done this, and I came in and opened the door, and there was tape all over the place. And then run away from him somehow. It was just awful. And then for the lights, we had handmade dimmers.
Oh, my.
Dimmers are made by the electricity happening in brine. Is that right?
Yes.
And they had levers, and they had a disc about this diameter, and levers that you could dim or work with the lights on. So real, which I thought was great fun. And of course, it made them feel they were doing
serious responsibility.
Things, yeah.
Yes.
But the building, they built a booth with a glass front up high for the electrical things, and the school somehow bought us a switchboard where you could put preset and it had all the tricks. But it wasn't nearly as much fun.
It was better to be primitive. How did you choose what you were going to have them perform? Did you have artistic license?
I would read a lot. I'd read catalogs a lot and talk to people and get suggestions. And the students weren't a great deal of help because their knowledge of dramatic literature was not
limited.
Very great.
Yeah.
But of course, I was always looking for things that had a lot of men. And it's easier to find a lot of men than it is a lot of women. The way plays were written then, it's changing a little bit now. I was just looking here, the fall of 1949, I did Room Service, which is a real farcical comedy, and got a lot of great male characters in it. And one of the things they always remember about it, one of them comes through into the room with this deer head with antlers, and somebody says, "How'd you carry that thing down here?" And he says, "It's all right, but I had a hell of a time in the revolving doors." They had New Yorkers, and I had some New Yorkers available who handled that material very well.
Yeah. Did you always, did anyone ever bring women into it? Did you ever get guest women to come in?
I mean, we, like the Elizabethans, we didn't have men playing women's parts. I recruited anywhere in town, and ordinarily a girl would be delighted to take part in this, and the boys were certainly delighted because it was a way to meet people. Meet girls.
You were more than just the director. You really were the producer and the caster and everything then.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You had to play all the roles.
Well, that's not unusual in small theatrical operations, I suppose. But one of the things I used to delight in telling people was that the boys, they were so smart and clever, and if I wanted an effect, like when we did Harvey, I wanted this half door to open and close on its own, and nobody, for it to be a mystery. And I said, just do it. I want that door open and close. And then I go away, and they'd figure out a way to make it happen. So I did not feel that I had to teach them. They enjoyed astounding me, and they often did.
They often did, huh?
Yes. In that particular instance, they built a floor on about this high off of the floor that we were playing on, so that you could have wires underneath it. And
so if you pulled it away.
Then once when we did Dracula, we had some bats flying around, and they were very good bats. Somebody came after the show and asked some questions about it. How did you do that? he gave us some kind of flip answer like, well, they weren't flying as well this week as they did last week. Well, you know. But they could create some wonderful effects. Good theater.
Good theater. Do you remember any play that was more your favorite than any others, or were they all fun?
Well, that's like saying which one of your children
do you love the most?
Yeah, they are. Each production is a child. Is a multi-personality.
How about in audience response? How about when you had audience response? Did comedies get better response, or classics, or mysteries, or was it a mixed bag?
Well, always in theater, a slam bang comedy does better. Some people refuse to go to the theater unless they say, I'm go to be entertained and to
have a laugh.
And have a good time. That exists on Broadway, any town that has major theaters. But a well-done serious play can, of course, pull people in, but not to the extent that a comedy can.
So did you try to have a comedy at least every season?
I suppose so. Yeah, I'm kind of guessing at my list here.
Did you do musicals?
No. I did Idiot's Delight, which had some dancing girls. There was a chorus thing that was supposed to be entertainment in this big hotel house. And one of the dance teachers in town brought her students over and to perform that night. I can't remember where the music came from. Obviously, it was recorded.
But you didn't focus on any kind of musicals. But they do now. They do quite a few musicals. So
they do.
I just wondered.
No, I didn't. That's a whole different bag, really. And I'm not a trained musical person.
So it was DramaTech. It was drama.
Yeah.
Well, how long did you stay in the Fieldhouse?
Oh, dear. Well, we were still there, as I say, when I left.
Oh, you were? So almost the whole period of time once it was built.
So I was there 17 years. And then they moved over to the church.
Do you look back at that as a happy time for you?
Oh, yes, it was still make do enough, like with sound and lights. The improvisation necessary to do a lot of things that just took ingenuity is now being done more capably. But as I say, I don't think it's quite as much fun. We worked together on choosing plays, and I made it quite clear that acting is only one little tiny part of theater. And then I thought that my boys should get the credit that the band people were getting. I was told that in the band, if you played for 2 quarters, that made you eligible to receive academic credit of 1/4 hour prior to that, after that time. So I said, why can't we have the same thing? So they let us do it. So my boys could get up to 3, 6, 9, 10 quarter hours. They could get 1 their freshman year, 3 their sophomore, 3 their junior, and 3 their senior. And some would stay longer. And that could make a difference toward graduation. So it was 1/4 hour doesn't sound like much, but they can add up.
And so they earn this 1/4 hour by performing.
Yes. And they, by working on the business side of the theater, by working on the construction side of the sets,